Hi guys, and welcome to today's tutorial. Today I'll be looking at the Leica iCON software and some of the import options available to its users. So within the Leica iCON data hierarchy video that you will also have available, we did give an explanation of how iCON structures its information a little bit differently and kind of the different import options that you are given. However, today I'm just going to run through and show you some of this information coming across. So we can come down into our data tab down on the bottom left hand corner from the iCON home screen. We can go into import and delete. What we will first note is that we can see a list down the left that will show our existing imported files. Currently, we do not have anything bar the default code list that automatically comes across when a new project is created. We also discussed how within iCON, you'll always have the options for green pluses to add and red X's to remove. So if we go green plus to add, will ask us which form of information we would like to bring across. We will just go through some of the main import options that you guys will be tackling on a daily basis. So we did discuss within the Leica iCON data hierarchy tutorial what these different categories meant and what type of information you'd ordinarily be looking to bring into each category. So what we will look at first is reference data. First is ask you to define the source. So we'll come from Kingston is our USB. Okay, and all Leica users will already know this, but if you're new to Leica, you'll understand that what we need to actually create on our USB is a folder called data. I can just pull this up on the screen just to give you guys a look. If I open up my file explorer, okay, I can show you that when I go into Kingston, I have a folder there literally named data. Okay, if I click into data, you can also notice that we can actually create a subfolder within the data folder if we so require. One of the advantages of this is that jobs are becoming more complex and the amount of information required for setting out on site is growing. So we might want to subdivide this information into different subsets or categories. This might be by levels or sections within the job or specific areas. So back to our iCON screen. So once we select Kingston, we can see location data and it shows the initial files that were in that data folder. However, we can select on data. And then you can see we can have this training folder. You are not limited to the amount of subfolders that you can have within the data folder, so you can break it up by each level within your site if you so wish. Okay, and it just gives you a lot more order in terms of trying to identify where your information is later in the job as your information amasses. So you can see there, Leica iCON automatically groups your file types into the different types of information that is present. So you can see there, we have ASCII, which is any form of text files. We can see a couple of examples of control files. We can see our DXF and DWG. We did also discuss within the CAD drawing prep tutorial that we do recommend the use of DXF, which is short for Digital Exchange Format. However, Leica iCON in its latest versions can handle DWG. The guys that did watch our CAD drawing prep tutorial, you will recognize this CAD training DWG. So what I will do is I'll just import it in without going into our import configurations options. And I'll just show you the issues that can arise from this. So we stressed within the CAD drawing prep tutorial the importance of understanding your drawing and understanding your information prior to bringing it in onto the site. So you can see there, we can simply select on the file and select green tick to import, and it will come up and give us import successful and define the points, lines, serifs, and text present within that DWG. We can select OK. You can now see that this file is within our imported files list. We can select home. If we just go into one of our applications, we'll say measure. You can see there, the first issue that we did recognize within CAD drawing prep tutorial is that you can have information that is segmented. You can see a base point was present within this drawing, which the designer could have used for translating the information. Okay, but the issue is when you bring this information into your field controller will want to give you a zoom extent for you to try to display all your information for you. Okay, so what we can do is we could press and hold zoom in until the zoom in button goes green. And what we could do is we could zoom in to our imported drawing. And I purposely brought the drawing in without going into our import configurations just to show you some of the issues you can have. So you can see our scale bar up in the top left-hand corner here says that this distance on our screen is 20 kilometers. So I know it isn't going to actually be 20 kilometers between these two grid lines. Okay, so we understand now that we've actually brought the drawing in with the wrong unit specified. This isn't an issue. So if it's a case that you're out on site and you have a drawing and you haven't actually got the facilities to get into a CAD package to clean it up, what we can do is you can import it straight away just to see your drawing and inspect it. Then we can come back in, we can press the red X, we can remove out our drawing, okay? And we can go through the same process again, except this time, what we will do is we will go into our import configurations option, which is the right-hand arrow just to the right of the drawing name. Okay, and we can see within this section that the first thing we can do is specify the units. So the drawing is clearly in millimeters and we specified it as meters, hence it came in at the wrong scale. So first things first, we can change it to millimeters. The next thing I generally look to see is present is this block options visible? The block options specifies whether there's actually blocks in the drawing. For those of you who aren't aware what blocks are, a block is the ability within CAD to group multiple entities together into a single object. This might prove useful for translating information within CAD or making the file size more manageable. Okay, but in terms of setting out, we want to be able to select individual elements within our software, so we do not want blocks. Generally, if I get in and I see that this block options is here, we can explode. However, those of you who have seen the CAD drawing prep tutorial will know that if a layer is locked, we cannot explode the entities. Okay, but again, we will just run under the assumption that we cannot get into CAD and we will just do the best with what we can. iCON also presents the tool to clean up the DWG file. Okay, and what this will look to do is minimize the file size, focus your information onto the primary source of where it is. So they will actually look to actually take out that base point or any outlying bits of information that it might deem as unnecessary. This won't prove 100% effective. It depends on the type of information that is scattered across our drawing, okay, and how it was done. We can also see our specified layers within our drawing. We have got the ability to unselect elements and bring in. However, as we discussed in the previous tutorials, we do always recommend that the drawings are brought into CAD and inspected first and cleaned up first prior to import. Okay, so once we're happy with our settings, we can select green tick again. And we can now see our file is being brought across. If we jump back into measure, you can see automatically our scale is correct. Okay, but we can also see if we press and hold zoom out and do a zoom extents, it no longer brings us miles back out, showing that original base point within our drawing. So that's our first issue resolved. So that is a quick look through where your files should be situated on your USB and how to bring across your CAD files. What we will now look at bringing across is if we jump back out to the home menu and go back into import and delete, we will look at importing in a text file. If we hit the green plus to add, we did say that control files generally would have to be ASCII text files. Okay, the reason being control points are generally going to be point specific. There won't be any added features like lines, text, or so on. So what we can do is we can select control. Again, go through same steps, specifying the source of the USB, selecting the location within the training folder, and I can select my control file. And similarly with the CAD files, we will want to go into our import configurations options. However, for this time, what we want to do is specify the column order within our text file. So the column order specifies whether the first column, the first bit of information specifies the ID. So we can see there C1 within our import preview is the ID of the point. The second is easting, northing, height, code. If we wanted to alter that, whichever is blue, we can specify by selecting the options on the bottom. So if I select ID, I could select northing if I wanted to change it, easting, height, and code. However, I would know that this is incorrect, so I will just change it back again. Height and code. What we will see is the field separator is currently set to comma, which is correct because we can see a line separates the entities correctly. But if I was to change this to blank, what we would see is commas separated them, but all the lines cross on the right in import preview, which is not what we want. So we can jump back in and change that back to comma, and you can now see it segments our information correctly. Okay, we can specify the distance units. You also have the option for row skip count. If you have kind of like a header line on your first line, you can't skip it, or any added lines. Again, what we do emphasize is that you do open your files on your desktop softwares, inspect them prior to import so you understand them better. So we know this is ready for imports. We can select green tick, select OK. Again, we can now see that our list of information is building on our imported files, and we'll just go across into measure, and we can see because we imported them as control, they do not come across as circular standard points, but they actually come across as stations with the triangle symbol. Okay. The next bit of information we will look to import in is an IFC BIM file. IFC, standing for Industry Foundation Class, is the interchange format for a 3D object. Okay, so we will go back to import and delete. We'll go to green plus to add information again. We will specify as reference data again because it is a type of information that we want to refer to. Select reference data. Again, from Kingston, data, training. And instead of going down into ASCII or DXF heading now, we will go further down, and we can see there we have structural.ifc. We can again select our import configurations options. However, you can see that the options are minimal. IFC will transfer over all the correct units and specify that within the software correctly for us, so we don't need to worry about it. We have got a similar option like we had with our CAD files, in the sense that we could switch off layers, but in this sense, they refer to them as classes. So if we didn't want the columns, we could in fact switch them off and they wouldn't come across. But again, as always, we recommend that segmenting your information and identifying targeted information is done in your desktop software prior to import. So we will select green tick again, and we will see there it will specify that 466 IFC entities have been brought across. We will select OK. Come back out, go back into measure, and what we can see now is we have our IFC, and if we go into our 3D view, we can see we have our structural model now brought across. Okay, we can select back to the pan tab and hit the north arrow again, and we will go back to a top view. Again, you will need the Layout Objects app in order for your iCON software to handle IFC files for import and also for layout tasks. Next, what we can do is we can go to import and delete, select green plus to add, except this time I would like to bring in background information. Okay, so if I have a reference CAD file or image, I can import it as a background image, and what I will be able to do is bring in large files that will come across simply as an image, so it won't take up much file space. We can use it generally for orientating ourselves relative on site and giving context to the site. However, we will not be able to select any of the entities first layout. So what I will do is I will actually remove out my CAD file, and I will re-import it as a background image. Again, go into my import configurations option, and I will just have to specify the units as millimeters and to clean up the DWG file. We can select import. Okay, and it's brought in a new file then again. So I can select home. This time I go into stakeout, and you can see the file has come across. We cannot see the points visible now because it hasn't brought across any of those entities, and I actually cannot select within layout any of my lines for setting out, as I can select one of my control points for stakeout. Okay. Next, what I would like to do is iCON now on its higher versions is able to handle PDF imports. So what I'll look to do is just show you how to import that. So if I just go to import and delete, the green plus to add, again I will refer to as reference data from Kingston data training. I'll go right down to the bottom, and you can see there now you also have the PDF import option. iCON will import your PDF. And you'll see we hadn't got any import configurations options, so it didn't give us any chance to specify a scale or units. okay, or select any of these, it will just have to bring all the elements across. So you can see our PDF file is here, okay. But the issue then is going to be that the drawing isn't going to be referenced. So if I come into my layer manager, I expand out my PDF and select show points, you can see it has brought it down at the 0, 0 origin, which is symbolized there by the red X. And you can see the mass of information that it's brought across. Okay, and this is actually level 1 floor plan for the structure model that we previously brought in as an IFC file. So what we can actually do is iCON has got the function for translate information. It can translate this PDF and actually position, rotate, and scale it by specifying 2 common points that are present within the PDF, but also within our model space. So this function is within the sketching app. So by going into sketching, going to our options down here, we can select data merger, and you can see there we can select our PDF. This function is not limited to PDF, but can also be used for CAD files. If we have a CAD file that we want to translate and we actually do not feel comfortable doing it in CAD, iCON makes it very simple for users to do. So we'll select next. And previously I brought in 2 control points. And these are actually the 2 control points I'm going to use because those 2 points are actually 2 corners of a stair core within the floor plan. So what I can do is, because I know which points they relate to, you can see the mass of points that have been generated on the PDF import. This is actually just from hatching that was present within the floor plan. So I know that C1 refers to this corner point here, and C2 refers to this corner point here. And it's important you select them in the correct order. iCON again will always prompt you. So origin points defined, proceed to the next wizard step. So it's constantly telling us what to do. So I select next. I can go into my object model space and I can select C1 and C2 in the correct order that I select the 2 corners within the PDF. And I can select next. And you can see it will actually create a CAD file for me. This CAD file then in turn could be exported back out to CAD to be cleaned up, any of that excess hatching. So you just have to give that a minute there. And you can see there, it's actually moved us from our existing position. So if I go back into the measure application, and if I press and hold zoom out, you can see our PDF has now been correctly positioned relative to the IFC. So what I can do is I can just switch off our IFC, green tick, and we can see that the C1 and C2 have now been correctly referenced relative to the PDF. We could then in turn use our checks application if we wanted to check dimensions, again just to reaffirm that the scaling has been correct within our conversion. So again, if we knew what the distance was between these 2 points, C1 and C2, okay, we could check the dimensions, or within the checks application, we could use our point align function and we could check distance offsets from grid line, or alternatively, what we could do is within the stakeout application, you have a function called new point, okay? But what we could do is, if we switch on the points within our newly created CAD file, if we knew what the coordinates were for a specific point, what you can actually then do is go toolbox, new point, and by selecting a point, I'm just using this one for example, you'll be able to inspect its easting and northing, and again give you that reassurance that the translation has come in correct. So that is some of the main import options for you guys. You can also see that we would have the option when we go to import for coordinate systems. This will only be used when we are using a GPS. So what I'll do is I will just hook us up do a GPS within the Profiles wizard. Okay, and you can see when I come into measure and I do a zoom extents, I cannot see my GPS. And you can also see no active coordinate system set. So it doesn't know where to actually project that position to. So what we can do is go to import and delete, add coordinate system, and it will always be from the internal memory, as the Irish coordinate systems are already preloaded into the coordinate systems folder. And you can see there, for an example, I know that I'm using Irish TN Republic of Ireland 15. I can select OK and green tick. You can see this has been added. I can change this at any time by removing and adding another. You only have to specify this once for the project and it will hold true for all your active jobs. We can now see that if I press and hold zoom out, I am located quite far away, so I can just move my GPS. Okay, and we can now see ourselves positioned with our active coordinates. Okay, and that is how we're able to import and specify our coordinate systems for an active project. So if I revisit measure, and what I will do is I will just measure and record 2 points at the top of my drawing here. Okay, and if I come back to the Home tab, back within my Data tab, you can see we also have Export. Within Export, it asks what type of information would you like to export. Content currently has specified as data. However, you can see we can export out coordinate systems. Again, if we do a localization, this will be covered in the localization tutorial. Okay, we can export that out and have it on record on a hard drive or on our desktop. We can export out code lists, ones that we've generated, reports. We can also export out our projects. Exporting out the projects is always recommended, as what it can do is it will create a complete copy. So if I just select that and export, and if I revisit my file explorer, go back to data, you can see it has a project here called projects. If I just go date modified, we can see Leica icon training has come out. If I go into my references folder, you can see we have all the information that has been on import. Within control points, we can see our control.geo file that's been created. Okay, but within the actual database file, you have a complete record of everything, everything from the last pole height that you used when selected to an NPR prism and so on. Okay, so it is good practice to probably do this at the end of every day. You can see it happens very quickly, but it just ensures that you don't incur any loss of information. Okay, revisiting the export options, you can also see that when we are selected within data, we can export out our control points or our jobs. If we select our job, what we are exporting is not what's visible on the screen within that particular job, but what we're exporting out is actually our surveyed information. This is explained further in the Leica icon data hierarchy tutorial. However, we can see that if I wanted to export out these 2 points that I've surveyed, I can select Kingston. I could actually select Kingston and into the training folder, and I could export them out either as a CAD file, as a DXF, or as a text.csv. You can also see, like with the import configuration, we also have export configuration specified by the right-hand arrow, where we can define the units, whether the information is 2D or 3D, and the point attributes that should be brought across, everything down to text size. Okay, and if I specify this and select green tick, export, I can give it a name. Confirm. We will now see if we again revisit our file explorer, that within our data folder and within training, date modified, we have export test. If you have any further questions, please feel free to get in touch.